Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at every single attribute, what they do, how to unlock them, and why the god rolls as they are. Now, when you first have a look at a piece of armor from the Crimson Isles, you'll see there that it will have two attributes in the middle. So for these boots, for example, my attributes are mana pull and mana regeneration. These, similar to the enchants, will go up to level 10. If you do notice a little extra that thing, all it means is that you don't yet have the Kuudra requirement to use it. In the same way that dungeon items have catacombs requirements, items from the Crimson Isles may have Kuudra requirements, which can be unlocked by beating that tier of Kuudra once. Now, of course, each piece of armor that you can get from Kuudra is going to be different, and these combination of attributes can make or break an armor, as well as be the main money-making method from Kuudra in the first place. Remember guys, if you do enjoy this video, make sure to mind that subscribe button before the Kuudra submerges. Now, to combine attributes, you can either type in chat/attribute menu, drop those in there and click the button in the middle. It will cost a little bit of coins depending on the level there. So you'll see I've taken an undead 4, an undead 4, and an undead 5. Like I said, these can either come in the form of shards or will just appear on every item or weapon in the Crimson area. But if you want to, you can head over here, speak to this NPC right here, and you will be able to reach this same menu. Attribute Fusion, the command, does require a booster cookie, but if you don't have a booster cookie, please go watch my other video. Go get yourself a booster cookie, it's very important to have one. Do keep in mind that any attribute tier 4 or above on a shard will automatically be soulbound. So in order to sell these, you'll either have to apply them to a piece of armor that's not soulbound, or go with some kind of collateral thing, but I'll generally advise against that, because anything involving collar is always a risk of being scammed. Now firstly, just to get them out of the way, we are going to have a quick look at the fishing attributes. So for starters, we have Infection, which is pretty much useless. It increases the chance of corrupted sea creatures, but of course, place down a totem, you can get as many of those as you need. Hunter sounds like it might be okay, gives extra sea creature chance, but as it goes, while you can get the attribute shard, it's currently bugged so that no crafted fishing rod will be able to get this perk, making it completely useless. Blazing Fortune, magic find on sea creatures, it's okay. There are far many better ways of getting magic find, so it's really not worth it to take up that extra slot. I will point out all of these go on attributes except for this next one, Fishing Experience, which can be very good if you don't like fishing. This one has a random chance to appear on any armor piece rather than on any fishing rod. I will say as well, Infection can also appear on armor pieces. We then also have Fisherman, which has its uses. If you're using corrupt bait specifically and you're going for the tier 3s, having a chance of not using up all of your obfuscated tier 1s and tier 2s can be quite useful. And then finally we have the best 3 for fishing rods. Fishing speed, obvious, gets you more things, whether you're fishing corrupted, you're fishing sea creatures, you're trophy fishing, it's gonna be your best bet. Trophy hunter, obviously if you're trophy fishing, this one combined with a fishing speed rod is going to be the best thing you can get. And then also double hook, if you're regular lava fishing, a double hook and a fishing speed is going to be your best bet. Next up, that brings us on to the sword attributes. Now the difficulty with these is that from the Crimson Isles, at least at the moment, there aren't all that many swords and bows which are actually proficient. So if we have a quick look through them, you'll see that Arachno, spider damage, it's already very easy to do tons of damage against spiders, so this one pretty much useless. Attack speed, I feel like it could have its uses in future. An additional 10 attack speed might help you retune your tunings a little bit. But for the time being, again, with the weapons that we've got available to us, pretty much nothing. Combo the same. Now Elite is one of the ones that can be slightly better. You'll see that it increases damage up to 30% against bosses and mini-bosses. For the people using them on lower floor dungeons, I can see it potentially having some use. Or perhaps if you were trying to grind out your blade souls and stuff. It's probably one of the better ones, but again, mediocre at best. Ignition, this one's pretty good. Increases the duration of fire damage, which means if you are going to be using a fire freeze staff or a Fire Veil wand. I'd argue two of the best sword items to come from the Nether update. Then Ignition is a very, very strong one. Life Recovery, you get a bit of health back. To be honest, life regeneration is never really something you should rely on. There aren't that many instances in the game in which a tiny bit of health regeneration is going to help you out too much. Having said that, given that the other ones aren't necessarily great, definitely not the worst thing to think about. Midas Touch, an additional 10 coins per kill, would be great in theory, except we've already got the Raider's Axe, we've already got the Daedalus Axe, it's just not needed. Undead, again, pretty much all of the undead mobs in the game can be one-shot. There are a few mobs in dungeons which are considered undead, so it may have some edge cases there, but apart from that, meh. Mana Steal, this one I like quite a lot, especially I've got it on my 5L wand, you can see there, just because having any additional mana from your abilities, it is only 1%, so again, is it worth maxing it out? Probably not, or 2% at level 10 rather, but still, compared to the other ones, this one's probably my personal favourite. Again, we've got Ender there. I couldn't actually find an attribute shard, so I did have to get my Fire Free staff, which does happen to have Ender on it. Ender, I feel, could be very useful for people who are using the staff with Void Glooms. Possibly something like a Fire Veil wand with some combination of Ignition and maybe Elite on there. Maybe an Elite Ender wand could be quite useful. Blazing as well, 9 damage against mobs in the Crimson Isle. Potentially good if you're trying to get kind of a semi-AFK setup going, your bestiary grinding, trying to get your Kuudra up. But again, I feel most of the mobs there, if you've got a Hyperion, they'll just get taken out. And then finally we do have Warrior, which sounds amazing because it increases melee damage, but unfortunately none of the swords focus on melee damage at the moment. Obviously there is the Ragnarok Axe, which helps buff your strength, so anything that would increase this strength would be amazing, but it just increases pure damage, which doesn't matter. And then we do also have the Enrager, which can have these attributes too. But the problem with the Enrager is that it's focused on survivability defense. It's basically a 2 billion coin Jingle Bells that gives you extra damage reduction. So as far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong about this particular item, as it is 2 billion coins, I've not been able to test one, but as far as I'm aware, most of the attributes are meh on this at best. Probably again, Mana Steal is going to be your best bet. Now finally we do have the bow attribute Deadeye. Unfortunately, I had a look on the auction. I could not find a single item or shard with the Deadeye perk. This does increased range damage, which again sounds like it could be very overpowered in the future, but for the time being it can only go on either the Sulphur Bow, which pales in comparison to the Juju or Terminator or any of the other bows that you should be using, or the Hollow Wand, which is barely even a weapon at this point. Now here's where we get into the really important attributes, the ones that will go on both armor and equipment. So first things first, we do have Arachno Resistance. Arachno Blazing Resistance, same as with all of the weapons, most people at this level aren't going to need that extra defense, that tiny bit of damage against spiders. I will say if you've just got to Kata 24, possibly through bestiary grinding, glaciite or some other means like that, you haven't done spider set and you're spending 500k, 600k on a cheap Crimson set, it might not be the worst thing in the world for Slayers, but generally speaking, they're not really needed. Experience, again, we've got Lapis Armor. Do we need better Lapis Armor? Maybe somebody does, but given the number of Grand EXP pots, Titanic EXP pots, I don't think it's necessary, to be honest. The first good one that we get to, however, is Speed. Now, speed might initially seem like something that's unnecessary. If you have a look at my speed down here, it is about there. You'll see I'm chilling at 200 speed at the moment with my Warden's helmet. Obviously, we've got the cap of 400 divided by 2. If you're going to be using a Young Dragon set, maybe a Black Cat, you might have up to 600 speed. But outside of dungeons, because of the God Pot, speed is not usually a problem. The way that speed becomes important is that as soon as we get into dungeons, speed above 100 reduces by 1/3, which means that in order for us to have our normal 400 speed, we actually need to have about 600, slightly less than, in order to reach that cap. And of course we don't have any of our God Pot effects, which means that many later players will end up using their tunings and accessories in order to gain this additional speed. Some people will also stack rabbit potions and dungeon pots, which means that this speed may free up additional tunings allowing players to give themselves more damage. So while it doesn't increase damage directly, speed is a very, very important one. Now, next up on the list, we have got Undead Resistance. Like before, not necessary. Maybe someone who's trying to do their first tier 5 Revenant or something, but pretty much move on. Breeze. Breeze is an incredibly good mage one. Now, the two ones that people know about when it comes to mage, I'm sure I've got them here somewhere, yeah. Mana Regeneration there, and Mana Pool. These two are known as the really amazing ones for mage because Mana Pool increases your intelligence. Higher intelligence both means A, you can use more abilities, but also B, those abilities will do more damage. And of course, Mana Regeneration, you just have more mana to go around. If you're spamming Hyperion, if you're spamming Midas Staff, if you're teleporting around, extra Mana Regeneration is always useful, both inside and outside of dungeons. But Breeze is often overlooked. Now, what Breeze does, you can see it there, is when you've not been damaged in the last 5 seconds or more, your mana cost for abilities is reduced by 5%. Now, in most cases, this won't matter because you'll be taking damage. If you're in a Kuudra fight, you've got maxed out Breeze armor, it won't matter because give it a second, you've been hit by a blight and your mana costs are back to normal. But one particular instance in which you ideally shouldn't be taking damage that requires a lot of consistent mana is flare grinding. Now, if we come beneath the volcano in the Crimson Isles to where the magma cube spawns, you'll notice around the edge, oh, there we go, we've got someone flying past, these sets of 3 blazes that will spawn. Now, when people kill these blazes, because they are so high leveled, they have quite a high chance of dropping a Vanquisher, which is very important for getting Nether Stars, a crucial component of Kuudra keys if you want to do later tier Kuudra. If you also use a Gauntlet of Contagion while killing them, it won't count as 1 kill, it'll count as 3, which speeds up the process massively. The problem is that if I were to try and spam my Hyperion, teleport around in the circle, I won't actually kill them because I don't want to steal this guy's lobby, but if I were to try and teleport around like that, you'll see that even with my little bit of Breeze, because I do have Breeze on a couple of pieces, we run out of mana very quickly. However, that little bit of Breeze I have, and if I were to have a max Breeze setup, means that we can keep going for longer, and in practice, alternating between Aspect of the Void, Hyperion, Aspect of the Void, Hyperion, Aspect of the Void, Hyperion, means that we'll be able to continue flare grinding for substantially longer, and as a result be substantially more efficient. Which is why Breeze, while not necessarily the most recognized mage attribute, is definitely one that you should consider. Now, as for the next one, after that we've got Lifeline. Lifeline's a very interesting one because it means that once your health drops below 20%, your damage and defense will increase that. You'll see that's only a Lifeline 3 shard, and it's already an increase of 7.5%, meaning that a Lifeline 10 shard increases your damage and defense by 25%. Now, with a maxed setup, that sounds like it can be very overpowered, and it can. But that 20% maximum health puts you in a very dangerous situation. There are strategies that will use Lifeline, and if you want to experiment with it, it's quite a cheap one, so it's definitely something to look into. But generally speaking, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be worth it on your sets. The next one is Life Regeneration. Please. Please, 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 please. Life Regeneration may act as an okay alternative to Vitality. Please never use Life Regeneration and Vitality on a further piece to tank, especially not in dungeons. You might survive, but I promise you that you will not contribute to whatever it is you're doing at all, and it is absolutely not worth it. If you need a tank set, get a Goldor set. If you need a tank set, get a Goldor set. Now, after that, obviously, Mana Pool, as we said, definitely one of the better ones for Mage. Increases your intelligence, increases your damage, you can use more abilities, we've been through it already. Dominance, one of the best attributes by far, if not the best attribute. Similar to Lifeline, it's a pure damage increase, only where Lifeline only applies in some very specific health management blah 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 circumstances. Dominance is a permanent percentage damage upgrade. A Dominance 10 piece will increase your damage by a whopping 15%. Combine that with the fact that we've got 8 slots, and suddenly you go from dealing however much damage you're normally doing to an extra 120% of your damage. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. After that, we've got an Ender Resistance. I couldn't find an actual attribute shard for this, same as all the other ones. I suppose maybe there's a few edge cases for Enderman Slayer, but pretty much unnecessary. Mana regeneration, like we talked about. Who doesn't like extra mana? Not going to increase your damage, but if you're running around, if you're trying to grind stuff, can be very, very useful, especially in a situation like Kuudra, where you're using a lot of mana over a very long period of time. Most of those can help with Diana and stuff as well. After that, we've got Veteran. Now, Veteran's an interesting one, because while Combat Wisdom, those of you that don't know, is just an EXP multiplier, Combat Wisdom might sound like it's good in theory, but the important thing to take into account here is that that Combat Wisdom will buff 2 things. One, if you're pet grinding, which many people who are grinding flares, grinding ghosts will be leveling up golden dragons, it will increase the rate at which those pet levels, which just give you more money overall. But also, and this is the reason I have it on my Aurora, it speeds up slayers. If you need 75 kills, I'm pulling numbers out here, but if you need 75 kills to spawn a boss, and suddenly you increase your combat wisdom by 100, you need 37, which depending on what boss you're doing and how quickly you're doing it, that might double the rate of your slayers. That is an incredibly good piece. And again, one of the more expensive ones that does showcase in some of the god rolls. Now, after that, we've just got Fortitude. It's health and defense. It's cheap. You can max it out relatively simply, but I'm pretty sure that a maxed out piece there will give you, what, 10? 5 or 10, something like that. It's not great. Oh, and then at the very end here, we do have Magic Find. Again, couldn't find any shards for this one. Magic Find's an interesting one, because I know that it's very popular. Yesterday, I was doing some wolves. We did actually drop an Overflux, which is chilling my stacks. Very happy about that. But yesterday, I was doing some wolves, and I found a guy with 400 Magic Find. Now, 400 Magic Find, you might be thinking, that's crazy, that's insane. This is the best thing in the world. We need to invest in it, we'll get more money, we'll get more drops. But because of the logarithmic nature of Magic Find, and I will have a video on this coming soon, it is probably not worth it. Sure, if your plan is to do 10 million Slayers, and all you're going to do is thousands and thousands, you're going to drop 50 Warden Hearts, and that extra 0.02% might make a marginal difference for you, then okay. But equally, you could have just got Veteran Dominance and one-shot everything and spawned your Slayers faster and still had like 300 Magic Find because of the Golden Dragon. So I know a lot of people like this, and it's definitely one of the flexier ones, but I'm not sure I'd use it. If you are going to try and grind for these god rolls yourself, keep in mind that Dominance, Vitality, Mana Regeneration, and Veteran require you to have beaten a Tier 3 Kuudra, a Burning Tier, and Magic Find will require you to have beaten a Tier 5 Kuudra, an Infernal Tier. Once you've got the requirements, you can drop these pieces from any Kuudra, so you could drop a Magic Find piece from a Tier 1 basic Kuudra, assuming you have the completion. Now, I've split this section of god rolls up into the use bases, as of course attributes are highly situational, and you're going to want different ones depending on what you're doing. But if you just want to know what the god rolls are, for Aurora, it's going to be Mana Pool, Mana Regeneration. For Crimson, it's going to be Magic Find Veteran. For Terra, Dominance, Vitality. Equipment, and again, situational, but it will either be Mana Pool, Mana Regeneration, Dominance and Speed, Dominance and Mana Pool, or Magic Find and Veteran. So, for Kuudra specifically, you're going to be using 2 sets. A Mage set, and from a Tier 5 Infernal Kuudra, you'll be using a Terra set to deal damage. Now, the god roll for this one is Mana Pool, Mana Regeneration. It is the best set for damage in the game. Mana pool, you have more mana, you deal more damage. Mana regeneration, you keep more of it. And it will usually be used by the CC, the one who clears, to make sure that they have enough damage and enough mana to continue clearing for the rest of the team. Once you get into the final stage of Kuudra, you will be swapping, keep in mind this is for Infernal only, you will be swapping into a Dominance and Vitality Terror set. Now, Dominance, as we've said, is the best, except for Lifeline, increase of damage, increasing it by almost a double at a maxed level. Vitality helps keep your health up, which means that you'll continue to have this dominance effect, as if you're not at full health, it will stop giving you the damage buff. People alternatively here may either use life regeneration instead of vitality, as it's a worse, cheaper version. Some people will too opt for lifeline instead of dominance, which only comes into play when you're beneath 20% health, but this is a much riskier strategy which I would not recommend to new people. While you're in Kuudra, people will usually be using a Gauntlet of Contagion and an Implosion Belt for when they're using their mage set, and a Molten set which grants additional defense in Kuudra and extra strength, which will either be on Dominance and Veteran, Dominance and Vitality, or Dominance and one of the mana ones, either Mana Regeneration or Mana Pool. Now, people may choose to use Mana Regeneration, Mana Pool for the first set and then swap into the second set, but that's why those ones are generally considered the best. Now, as we hop into dungeons, the goals become slightly different. Here is where the dominance and speed or dominance and mana pool equipment comes into play. Of course, you're not going to be using armor and weapons with attributes, otherwise you'll still have your equipment. And so people will generally opt for a Gauntlet of Contagion to help with clear, a Molten Belt and a Molten Necklace, and either a Molten for a little bit of extra strength. It doesn't really make a difference though, so most people will opt for a Gas Cloak. And of course that Gas Cloak gives you a little bit of regeneration. Here, the speed, like we've said, you want to have 600 speed, you want to be max speed at all time, and it helps to free up your tunings. And then Mana Pool is only going to be important if someone is playing LCM at a very high kata floor, as that extra mana will give them more extra damage, which combined with dominance will be much more important than speed, as they're usually trying to one-shot mobs and not clearing the dungeon in the same way. If you're going to be killing flares, it will either come down to a Veteran and Mana Regeneration set, such that you can continue to kill them for as long as possible and get as much EXP while pet leveling. A Mana Pool Mana Regeneration set, which is actually less efficient for flares, but it will make sure that you're doing enough damage to one-shot them. So some people will have Mana Pool on various equipment that they're using. And then finally, replacing Mana Regeneration with Breeze is a very effective solution for flares specifically. Here, people will be using the Gauntlet of Contagion, the Implosion Belt. Gauntlet of Contagion triples your kills, Implosion Belt increases your damage. And again, after that, it's probably going to be a Molten set. It is important to note that because some of these sets can be quite expensive, people will use the cheaper sets to get higher level attributes, as the attributes are more important than the gear itself. Using various blaze pieces is quite common as well. Finally, for anybody who's going to be doing Blaze Slayer, that is where the Magic Find Veteran Crimson comes into play. People may choose to use Dominance or Vitality as well if they need that extra damage, but the set that they'll generally be using here consists of a Vanquished Gas Cloak, a Vanquished Blaze Belt, a Vanquished Glowstone Gauntlet, and then a Vanquished Magma Necklace here. You'll see here that they do have to be vanquished. This is a normal Magma Necklace and you don't see anything at the bottom, but when you equip this, similar to the Monster Raider set, it gives you a secret full set bonus, the Vanquisher set, which increases your damage by 10% and decreases received damage by 10%. Again, similar perks for the attributes. People will usually be using Magic Find focused, Dominance focused, Combat EXP focused to speed it up faster, so Veteran, or Vitality if they do need that extra help. Lastly, dragons deserve an honourable mention. Now here, people are going to be using Dominance as their main one. I haven't seen anyone try and use Lifeline on a dragon, but I can see that in theory that might work. But again, Dominance and Magic Find is probably what it's going to come down to. Although, Dragon Video, make sure that you don't get too much Magic Find, or you'll guarantee yourself a Dragon Horn. It's also worth noting that some people will choose to use the Ender equipment here, as it does have its stats doubled in the end. Now, I'm hoping that that covered everything you need to know about attributes, which ones are best, and why they're best. Again, if you've got any questions about Hypixel Skyblock, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I will do my very best to help you out. I know it was a bit of a long one, but I wanted to make sure that we covered everything. And as always, guys, thank you everybody much for coming out here, and I will see you all in another stream. Bye, guys!